How would you pitch this to kind of what's the elevator pitch on what it is that you guys do that's a little bit different and unique from the landscape?
Yeah, for sure. I'm the CEO and founder of Liquid. At Liquid, we're building an operating system for agile businesses. That's what we call them. Agile businesses are essentially like modern businesses that are using a more flexible and a global network of freelancers, contractors, vendors around the world. And this came out of a problem that we had at our previous company, where we were trying to manage how to work with a lot of subcontractors everywhere. And so it's a kind of unbelievable how hard it is to work with people who are not on payroll, everything from contracting to SOWs to invoices to payments and all that. And so it evolved out of that, but really it's become a platform to really streamline working with a modern workforce. And so a lot of our focus is on payments, moving money around the world and having invoices getting paid, contracts, and then of course sort of doing spend management, because you have a flexible, lumpy way to pay these guys that you're going to end up trying to control some of the cash flow. So that's our platform, is trying to bring all of that together and make it so it's really easy and controlled for people who work this way.
Got it. And what was the previous business? And then, what was like those pain points that you ended up deciding that you're solving now with Liquid? But, what was the previous business? What was the team like? And what were you guys doing?
Yeah, so our previous business is called Flex Team. It's actually doing really well, have some big clients that are working on consulting projects with us. But the genesis is my co-founder there, Tamara, and I, as well as Yolanda, the three of us really thought about how to leverage the workforce that are actually at that time, women who had dropped out of the workforce because they want to, take care of their kids and whatnot. And we wanted to use their collective brain power in a different way. So what we did was set up a consulting company where we allow people to pick up smaller, more micro projects, and we would aggregate them and then actually be the interface for the clients. As we were doing that, which is very different when you have a bench of these subcontractors doing all this stuff, it's actually much more difficult than so if you actually kind of think about the last time you hired an agency or a consultant, like you have to agree to what it is, you have to put it on paper, have some, consulting agreements, you probably have to get the right tax forms, and then after you do the work, you have to, make sure you get the invoices and pay. And of course, there's all the compliance laws that goes with, being in California. So we ended up sort of like trying to make this a lot easier for ourselves. And then that software that we built for ourselves sort of became Liquid. And so Flex Team is run by another leadership team now, doing really well. And then Liquid is the software that spun out of it, and that we've been at it for about 2.5 years now.
You spoke about your other co-founders, Tamara and Yolanda, who I've had the pleasure of meeting too and working with together. But you guys have this unique story, I feel like, of coming out of MIT together, or all, it's a woman-led team. Why can you speak a little bit about that kind of like mission, what your guys' background is together, why you guys decided to go forward with this kind of like, woman-led kind of team that you guys have built very strongly? Yeah,
I mean, it's something that we felt really strongly about when we were doing Flex Team. The whole genesis was we saw our friends not being, having to pick up, work that just felt like they were a little bit below their, capabilities. And I just felt like both sides were missing out, right? The people who could actually hire them, as well as the people who can do the work. And it was all because the structure in the middle wasn't there. So it's like they couldn't fit into the 9-to-5. So how can you make it so you can leverage this brain power? And then of course, the brain power is dying for some smart work as well. And so for us, it was really like the MIT part is awesome because that is our world. And we saw all these really smart, powerful women who had a lot of experience at, the Goldmans and the McKinseys, and then was, the superstar PTA mom, and they wanted to do more. So for us, it was just like, how do we rethink the corporate structure? How do we rethink all the things that make it so hard for both sides to actually connect? And that was sort of the reason why we just put ourselves in the middle. And that's what Flex Team was. But realized pretty quickly that you can't really do that, right? Just be in the middle and be the human in between that goes, because there's a lot of things that are just fundamentally different about what the reason why corporate structure is the way it is and what it could be. So my biggest example always is there was a point where we had on-prem, servers, right? And so at some point it went to the cloud, right? And we could buy pieces of it. Like, why can't we rethink how it is for our resources, and you would be able to bring all these people off the sidelines to work with them? That was sort of what we really cared about. And then more and more as we went through Flex Team, I think what we realized is, in order to help the contractors and this pool of talent that are not in the corporate world, you have to make the clients, the people who actually have the money and actually care about the projects, think differently, and you have to make it easier for them. And so that's where Liquid really came from. Is like, in order to get more projects flowing to these people, what are the ways you can make it easier? And it's like, all the little things that make it hard, we wanted to make it easier. So which is like everything from contracting to payments, and could you actually help them unlock if you can make the argument that you have a project, and instead of thinking about not doing it or getting an employee, what if you started to think like, hey, there's a whole nother resource, and it was admin and payments and all that stuff was not a factor in your decision. Could that make it so more work goes that way? And that's the idea behind all of this.
And maybe you could speak about the things that you feel like that's been a pro, and then maybe like some of the disadvantages of that kind of mindset, with Liquid now, and in terms of like where you guys are and where you're going and all that.
Yeah, I mean, just like sometimes I think about my personality not being as like I sometimes wonder, I know this is probably not the right way to say it, but I wonder if a more aggressive like white guy who would take what I have and sell it in a different way. I think about that a little bit. Is it just am I hampering it because of my personality, and do I need to be more aggressive and less conservative on that? So there's sort of that's probably my con that I think of sometimes. But the pro is that we're working with things that are like moving money, payments, like spend and contracts. Like, these are things you can't do like a plus or minus 20%, right? Yeah. You have to be pretty right on. And so in some ways, I do appreciate that I and my team are very operational minded and are able to dot the I's and cross the T's, because I think it's really important. So everything, pros and cons. And sometimes I think it's really good for our operations and product. That's probably the part that I need the most help, which is where you came in, was the sales and marketing side is the thing that I struggle more with and learning the most right now. And I don't know if that's a personality thing or that predisposition part, or just, my lack of knowledge, because that's not my background. So, yeah.
And what would you say, like, is the overall, like, if there's the social component of what you're building, and what kind of, like, what's the I guess, like, the thesis for, why you're building it, and how do you imagine the workforce evolving in the next few years, and how do you play a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like, I do really believe that, that there's a better way to make a perfect fit to make work perfectly fit everyone in every business. I truly believe that. And the reason, the vehicle to make that happen, I think, is having more liquid businesses. And so what that means is that not everyone, it doesn't mean that employees go away. I mean, there's a reason for having core employees, but that having the resources around it where you can tap, experts as needed, and advisors, and part-time, and, all the different expertise. And for me, I really want those people to think of themselves their own businesses, right? So it's like a instead of an employee, you're starting to think about the biggest company that's hiring, and the small, like, individual is a company and a business in itself, and you're hiring each other to get work done. And it changes the relationship from an employee to, employer to employee to business partners, and I think the business to business, if you think about that, and then thought about what is the best thing that this person can provide the world as a business, a lot of them is to have multiple clients. Like I've talked to a lot of PR people that says, I'm actually a better company, better business because I have multiple clients and I can do the learnings from different things. I think you actually said that, Chris, at one point, was that, having all the different clients makes you learn certain things you've tested that you want to put it in somewhere else. And so I think just having some places, having one job isn't always the best, I think. And also it doesn't sometimes fit their lives. Like maybe they do want to design their lives in a totally different way. And so for me, it's this, personally, I care a lot about, freedom and like everything being equal, leveling the playing field, like equality and just people just like thinking differently. And I think the Liquid businesses are kind of that, is my version of that for the world. And I think it would just unlock a lot of different things and make people work in a different way and design their lives in a different way. And I think that would be really, really cool. So that's what Liquid is about. Yeah.
As in, starting any business, right? Like what's been some of the biggest challenges, like biggest challenges, maybe, different hats that you've worn that has been not your favorite, or do you have like a moment where, I was just talking to somebody not too long ago where it's like they were raising their Series A and literally like had 1 week of runway left and was waiting for the money to hit their account, otherwise they're gonna have to let go like 50% of people. I mean, like, how have you had any of those kinds of like crazy moments along this ride, and how do you I guess like handle that pressure and then come out on the other side?
Yeah, I hope I'm never in that position. Maybe this is another benefit of the conservative thing, is that I don't think I would get to the 1 week. But I do believe that it's been a lot harder to get to what, that product market fit. Like sometimes I'm like, I'm a smart person. Our team is really smart. We know what we're doing. We feel like we should be able to figure this out. But it's actually like way harder than I imagined. I mean, it's so different than a service business. It's so different than joining a company that already has it, or any of the other experiences that I've had, right? And it's just to, I think I've said this to you again too before, is that we know we're throwing at the right target, but it's like we're not at the bullseye. And I know I'm throwing at the right target, but it is literally the most frustrating thing to not know that you can't get it every time. And so the biggest thing for me is always like, there's so many variables. Like for me, I have a very scientific mind, right? You're like, here's the variables. We are eliminating these things. These are the decision trees. And it doesn't work that way. Sometimes a channel is working, these messages are working, and then suddenly it doesn't work and you don't know why. And so I think there's just being able to, you're not in control, you're getting close, and just giving yourself, like, trusting the timing of it. And know that it's in the right place. But man, it is really hard for somebody who likes to, have an answer, right? So yeah, that's probably the hardest.
Let's just say somebody has that, they're experiencing a pain point. They feel like they have an idea. What would be your advice to kind of like next steps in terms of how to evolve it? And maybe you have some experience with Liquid, obviously, from going from Flex Team, knowing that that's a core problem, making those first initial steps, but then obviously I think after those first initial steps, you start realizing what the opportunity could potentially be. But it's like, how do you get to that kind of like aha moment as to like what you should be doing?
That's the hardest part, right? And this is an advice that I was given and I ignore still, and I shouldn't ignore. And it's probably, it's the focus, right? And it's actually being okay getting not solving everything at once. For me, it's a little bit difficult. My platform is all about trying to streamline a whole workflow. Like our workflow was annoying, and so it's not one little widget, and we're trying to get so for me, it's been, I need to solve everything and then sell it. And I think there's always a smaller piece to each thing that you could have tested. So if I think about if I have to do Liquid over from 2 years ago, like people say to talk to customers. Yes, I've done that. Customers lie. Like potential customers, they tell you they're excited. None of that. It's really just like trusting your gut and doing enough testing and all that, but like actually putting it out there and being really smart about the order of operations on what you're going to actually do, instead of trying to do everything 60% and everything 80% isn't as good as 100% of one, 100% of the next, 100% of the next. And so, right now, even to this day, I'm like, we're selling to agencies and finance and ops and startups. And like, yeah, I don't have a really good answer to it because, and is it to pick one? Is it to and we've done all the textbook things that people tell you, or all the advice that we've been given. But so I think it's just like being really regimented about being focused and doing one thing at a time. And it's hard for me even to this day. And if I would give myself that advice every day, but I don't actually listen. So maybe that's the thing to do.
What are some of those things for you? What motivates you? What inspires you? What keeps you going and pushing you to continue to problem solve, continue to like put one foot in front of the other, even when it's like you're tripping and falling and feels like you're crawling to the finish line?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I think it's so important to know your purpose, know the company's purpose, know your purpose, and then and just like why you're doing what you're doing. I know people say that all the time, but it's really, really important because it's like if I had to, doing a startup isn't easy. It's like probably the last thing you should do. If you're worried about it, you shouldn't do it. You should probably just have a job, right? So it's just so much harder. There's no, I mean, the glamour and all the things that you read about, it's like such a small percentage, right? And so I think the grind, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, it's hard. And then you know why you're doing it. So now you've convinced your team and recruited all these people and investors and advocates and mentors and all these people. And so you've told them the why, and now they're rallying around you. And so then that's the second level of motivation, right? Is like these people bought into it. They're putting their heart and soul. And so you look at them and you can't give up because these guys are working really hard to make the dreams come true, right? And they care about it. And so I feel like a lot of it is like internally to the purpose. And then of course the people around you who believe in it as well. And so it's not saying like I don't want to let them down, but we're all in this boat together and we're just going to continue to row, and it's all part of the journey. And yeah, I don't know. It's also, you learn so much every day. I like the fact that you get to learn everything. And so if you chalk it up to like pretty optimistic person. So if you chalk everything up to like every down is a learning opportunity, and then you can learn to the next one and try not to make that mistake. I think it's like kind of a fun journey too, for the quickest way to learn all the stuff about a business. So yeah.
How do you find, or how do you retain, I think, talent that you think really is going to help complement what you guys are building? Is there any like certain traits you look for, questions you ask, stories, backgrounds that you look at? That's maybe like outside of the norm, just like maybe personal to you?
Yeah, I mean, when I left my last company and I knew that I wanted to do something for myself, I actually wrote down like who I wanted to work with. I didn't even have the idea. I said, if I ever get to work with people like people I get to choose, which would be the most exciting thing about a startup, this is the type of traits I want. And really, it came down to three things, which we used to talk about at the beginning of Liquid. It was just like, I want people who always bring their best shit, right? Like they give a shit and they get shit done, right? And it was always like, it doesn't matter. I want them to care, and I just want them to always be proactive, and then I'll also just like, get a lot done that they know they can do, be proactive and all that. The things that I think now, again, interviewing and finding people is another thing that I've learned a lot. We did go through an exercise of trying to put down our company values and think about what questions you could ask to really exemplify some of that. I never really thought of it that way, but I think it's really important to do something like that. What is core to making your whole team work? Because people talk about the superstars that come in and is super toxic. Like, what does toxic mean to your company? And I think for us, like going through that exercise of writing down values and writing down what questions and what are actually the best answers that you could potentially hear. And I think that's probably a way to really understand it. And the other part is like, it's a startup, right? Like you have to get certain people who just like get that there is no a plan can change in a day, in an hour. It is like, it's hard. Some people who haven't worked in it, like, they I probably think I'm like, changing my mind all the time or super fickle or whatever. And it's not, right? Because you're just adapting. And so it takes a certain types of people who are okay with being that way. And again, I think that type of trait added to people who care about your mission makes it so all that other stuff meshes really well together. And so I think that combination of things, it's like I'm now sharing what we're about. And if you're not really into it, it doesn't resonate with you. I think I wrote a thing called like a 3-drink rant, right? Like I have my 3 drinks and I wrote down why I'm doing this. You read it, it doesn't resonate with you. Maybe this is not even a place for us to have an interview about, because there's so many ups and downs, and I want you to be in it for the right reasons.